Well, then I believe we can hear you. Sound check.
Good morning, Kavya. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
We are live. I'll start the recording.
All right,
Nandita, we can start now.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the fourth day of the fourth annual edition of Metaverse Safety Week, focusing on cybersecurity and data protection with an overall theme, navigating the cyber frontier in the AI-powered metaverse. My name is Nandita Naurara. I am a co-chair of this track. I am thrilled to guide our discussions today. I'm the Strategic Privacy Advisor at XRSI and will be representing them today. The Metaverse Safety Week is an annual awareness campaign created by the XRSI Extended Reality Safety Initiative to promote a safe and positive experience within immersive environments. As the metaverse evolves, the risks associated and hazards continue to grow. These risks range from physical harm to human beings, cyberbullying, financial fraud, intellectual property rights violation, and exposure to inappropriate or illegal content to a set or more implicit risks such as the ones brought out by AI. Today, we delve into the critical intersection of cybersecurity, data protection, and emerging technologies, including AI. We are deeply grateful to the Global Privacy Assembly, GPA, and XRSI for co-organizing today's discussion and leading key aspects of our deliberations. GPA seeks to provide leadership at international level in data protection and privacy. It does this by connecting the efforts of more than 130 data protection and privacy authorities across the globe. The Global Privacy Assembly's vision is an environment in which privacy and data protection authorities around the world are able to effectively fulfill their mandates, both individually and in concert through diffusion of knowledge and supportive connections. XRSI is the world's leading organization dedicated to providing intelligence and human advisory services that are critical to the protection and well-being of emerging technology ecosystems. With a strong emphasis on critical aspects such as safety, privacy, security, human rights, human well-being, responsible innovation, governance, and regulation, XRSI offers comprehensive expertise to ensure the responsible and ethical advancement of emerging technologies. By placing the emphasis on human intelligence, XRSI brings together a global network of experts and thought leaders committed to shaping the future of technology in a way that prioritizes the welfare of individuals and society as a whole. We offer standardization, certification, policy making, and workforce development professional advisory services for the emerging technology domain. To coordinate today's session, several program committee members will be assisting me online. Some of the key roles I'd like to highlight. Moderators are Jordan Weissman for XRSI Advisor and XRSI founder Kavya Perlman. Timekeeper, XRSI Advisor Quinn Banks. Swarm AI representative, President of Unanimous AI, David Baltaxe. A special thank you to our lead sponsor, Meta, for sponsoring the event for the third year in a row to ensure it remains accessible and free to participate. Meta builds technologies that help people connect, find communities, and grow businesses. Meta is moving beyond 2D screens and into immersive experiences in the metaverse, helping create the next evolution of social technology, giving people the power to build a community and bring the world closer together. Meta's focus will be to bring the metaverse to life and help people connect, find communities, and grow businesses. The metaverse will feel like a hybrid of today's online social experiences, sometimes expanded into 3 dimensions or projected into the physical world. The program committee deserves commendation for curating an impactful agenda and our community partners for their active contributions and observations. Before I turn this over to the co-host, let me remind you that Metaverse Safety Week is a 5-day affair. We will have one of the most important sessions tomorrow. Today, we're focusing on cybersecurity and data protection. Tomorrow, we'll be focusing on global privacy and regulations, co-organized by GPA and XRSI. Our session today is structured for engagement and insight. It'll be 4 hours with 3 breaks, 2 5-minute breaks and 1 20-minute break. We'll start with the opening remarks and testimonies from key stakeholders, followed by 2 thematic discussions on separate subtopics, each followed by an intelligence gathering Q&A session where contributors and observers can collectively shape our conclusions. All the collective input will be used to compile a post-roundtable report with appropriate attributions to be published after the Metaverse Safety Week concludes and before the year ends. Lastly, many thanks to the individuals and representing organizations who are here today to actively contribute and observe: Interpol, HTC, Future of Privacy Forum, Crime Stoppers Australia, European Cybercrime Center, University of Glasgow, INAI, and others. A full list of community partners and contributors is available on the MSW website, www.metaversesafetyweek.org. A few ground rules before we start. Please keep your microphone muted unless speaking. Please use the virtual hand-raising feature to contribute. Please keep comments concise and within the allocated time. Please maintain respect and professionalism in discussions. At any given time, please use the chat feature for related resources or side comments. You are encouraged to be on video at all times, especially while delivering remarks. Over to my co-host, Alexander McTeague-White, Bermuda's first privacy commissioner appointed by the governor of Bermuda to take office in January 2020 as founding head of the country's Data Protection Authority.
Good day, and thank you very much, Nandita. I am delighted to be here at Metaverse Safety Week. Our office's regulatory vision is based on what we call the Mid-Atlantic Privacy Compass. This compass uses its cardinal and ordinal points to highlight critical considerations in data governance and serve as guide markers for organizations, oversight groups, and society generally in support of industry standards and principles. The compass can provide a broader view and a tool to inform strategic decisions. So I want to focus on one of those compass points where I argue that organizations should be driven by a sense of community. Collectively, we may achieve more than is possible on our own, and that includes successfully protecting rights. So we must seek to share our knowledge and experience so that the community can benefit from the sum total of it all. Our society's current incentive structures often reward hiding mistakes or misfortunes from the community for fear of inviting regulatory actions or even public criticism. Mistakes, however, are the best teacher, especially when we can learn from others' mistakes. So we must encourage and incentivize the sharing of lessons learned and hard-won knowledge, especially about cybersecurity and data usage, and especially involving innovative technologies like the ones we will discuss here today. We often try to isolate or compartmentalize responsibility and blame whenever there are issues like cybersecurity breaches. Many of the mechanisms to do so in our global society derive from long legal or business tradition or even philosophies of individual responsibility. There may be lawsuits or regulatory punishments that try to assign fault to one specific side or the other. However, data protection blends these categories and contributions by the different parties. When data is misappropriated or misused, the organization may be a victim alongside the individual, albeit with a different spectrum of harms. Mistakes may have occurred or harms accrued despite their due diligence, and rushing to point fingers will do nothing but obscure the true lessons learned. I believe that this need for different groups to work together implies the need for a new guiding philosophy to our global society, a data protection social contract. So I don't mean this term in the sense that we should identify who has the divine right to use personal data. Rather, it's to address the fact that with all of us operating separately and with organizations amassing data for their own interests and individuals largely unable to monitor or control what happens, we find ourselves in a state of anarchy. So instead of allowing norms or rules to develop ad hoc, we should make conscious decisions about what community we want to build, what responsibilities should fall on each of the various stakeholders, and how they should interact and collaborate to meet their obligations. So in addition to learning from others' lessons, organizations should keep front of mind their sense of community when making decisions about how we choose to operate, asking how data or experience can be used for the public good. The decisions that we make should focus on creating a better village, both global and local, for us all. So turning from that hopefully inspirational sentiment to today's agenda, I will refer back to my colleague Nandita to discuss our goals and logistics. Thank you again. I'm very excited about our discussion today.
Thanks, Alex. We'll quickly go over our goal for today's program and agenda. Our goal for this roundtable at Metaverse Safety Week is to address risks arising from cybersecurity threats that influence global stability and individual safety, focusing on topics like threat intelligence, data protection mechanism, and strategic responses. Discussions will also cover recent developments like the EU AI Act, examining its impact on AI in the metaverse, with a focus on compliance, ethical considerations, and the balance between innovation and user protection. These efforts are directed towards enhancing user safety, privacy, and integrity. As we proceed, a reminder that today's key objectives are: first, understanding cyber threats. We aim to identify and comprehend the evolving spectrum of cyber threats in the AI-powered metaverse. Second, data protection and privacy. Our goal is to formulate dynamic and responsive frameworks for data protection and privacy, specifically tailored for immersive digital environments. Third, collaborative resilience. We will work together on developing collaborative strategies to bolster the security of emerging technologies. Let's work together to ensure the metaverse remains a platform for freedom, equality, and respect for human rights. To begin, for the opening remarks, I invite Madan Oberoi, the Executive Director from Interpol, to provide his opening remarks. Over to you, Madan.
Thank you, Nandita, Kavya, and Alexander. It is indeed a great pleasure to welcome all of you to this important discussion under the theme of navigating the cyber frontier in the AI-powered metaverse. As Nandita was mentioning, my name is Madan Oberoi. I'm Executive Director for Technology and Innovation at Interpol. I look after 3 directorates, which include the Innovation Center of Interpol, the Capacity Building and Training Directorate, and the Information Systems and Technology Directorate. In an era that is marked by a rapid evolution of technology, we often find ourselves at the intersection of innovation and security, balancing between the challenges and opportunities offered by these technologies. One thing is clear, that technological advancement has significantly impacted the global security landscape, which has become one of the most important concerns of our time. With the emergence of Metaverse, where the digital and physical worlds converge, we are witnessing a rise of new threats that have the potential to cause harm on our societies, businesses, and individuals. These threats in the virtual world, which could be further exacerbated by the misuse of AI, can have very real-world consequences. In fact, it is not the technology itself which is posing a challenge, but rather the differences in the adoption rates. What we have seen is that criminals are normally the early adopters. They are exploiting the technologies much better and presenting us with unique challenges. As we immerse ourselves into the world, the metaverse, world of the metaverse, the speed of adoption will be a critical factor, whether we can keep it safe or not. One of these challenges pertains to data. As we navigate this 3D world, issues surrounding data security and privacy will remain at the forefront. Without adequate safeguards and regulations in place, the potential risks loom large, and the metaverse could become a playground for malicious actors. Moreover, we are confronting various legal gaps that hinder our ability to criminalize various harms or the potential harms effectively and timely. National and regional efforts
Madan, we lost your audio.
And video as well. Nandita, I'll check in with Madhu on
Yeah.
the back. Maybe we can resume with the next speaker.
Yeah. Oh, I see Alvin's here. So, Alvin, we'll start with you. All right. While we're figuring out some technical issues, let's move forward with our next speaker. Next, we have Alvin Wang Raylan, the China president at HTC, leading all aspects of VR and smartphone businesses since 2016. This year, just added the global VP of corporate development role, driving critical partnership engagements for the company. He's also currently the vice president of the industry of VR Alliance with 300 plus company members, president of an 18 billion VR VC Alliance firm. Welcome, Alvin.
Thank you for that introduction. Yeah, I think we're at a very important juncture, and I'm really glad you're talking about this topic at this time, because in the next few years, the AI-powered metaverse will actually be a real thing and will be a significant part of all parts of our lives. You know, as you see my background, and Lewis and Rosenberg and I just wrote a book about this particular topic. And in fact, we use the same term, AI-powered metaverse, because we feel like the combination of AI together with XR is going to, you know, find itself within all aspects of our lives. So it is such an important topic for us to discuss. And there's probably cybersecurity and privacy and security and kind of maintaining our agency are all very important parts of what we need to make sure we're well prepared for, because that technology is going to seep through all of what we do. So in addition to my work at HTC, and in fact, I spent several years working for two different cybersecurity companies in the past, both in consumer and network and corporate security. And I also helped to deploy an international backbone system for data centers around the world. So I'm quite familiar with all of the technical aspects, as well as the AI aspects. I've also worked in AI for last 30 years, both AI and XR and internet technologies. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And it's important for us to also to note that we have to look at this not only on a national security level, but also a consumer security, a corporate security, and a national security. And to be able to look at the aspects of what will influence all three of these levels. And, you know, in terms of important to maintain also the privacy and identity of individuals, in addition to the security of networks and the security of nations. In fact, one of the things I think I'm actually a little concerned about is how powerful this technology will be in the next few years, in terms of how it will be able to influence us and manipulate us. So how do we make sure that not only are we making, not only are we not letting bad actors use it against making attacks on networks and on facilities, but also kind of subversing our agency, which is something that can be happening in the background invisibly, because of the power of a multimodal path to our brains through this new medium. So I'm not going to go through all the details, but I'm really looking forward to this discussion, and I think we've got a lot of the right people here that's going to provide insights. And looking at Nandan's earlier mention, having been in the cybersecurity space, that they're the first people to use new advances in technology are actually bad actors. And so how do we make sure we have the countermeasures that are going to be there to protect both consumers and corporations as well as countries from these bad actors? And I feel like that's something that the world hasn't spent enough time on. There's a lot of network security and kind of antivirus and anti-denial service attacks. Those type of work have been done a long time. But how do you counter AI influence and detect it on a more automated basis? Relying on humans themselves to do it, it is very, very difficult for us to be able to sense it. And so educating humans, educating the public is actually also a major area where I feel like we really haven't done enough. So hopefully there's some discussion in terms of how we do that, because most of the real threat in networks is actually the social attacks that happen. And it's less about the technical attacks because humans are very easily influenced and manipulated. So, all right, I will stop here and I look forward to a very deep discussion.
Thanks, Alvin. Our next speaker is Jameson Spivak, Senior Policy Analyst, Immersive Technologies at the Future of Privacy Forum, where he leads emerging work on questions of privacy and data protection related to immersive technologies like virtual reality, immersive gaming platforms, and brain-computer interfaces. Welcome, Jameson.
Thank you, Nandita, and thank you to Kavya, XRSI, Global Privacy Assembly, and all those helping to put together this panel and the broader Metaverse Safety Week. As Nandita mentioned, my name is Jameson Spivak, and I'm a Senior Policy Analyst at the Future of Privacy Forum. Organizations are increasingly incorporating immersive technologies into their products and services, blurring the boundaries between physical and digital worlds. Immersive technologies hold the potential to transform the way people learn, work, play, travel, take care of our health, but also create new privacy, data protection, and cybersecurity risks as well. Many of these risks stem from the data that is needed to power the metaverse and immersive technologies, which often require collecting, using, aggregating, and sharing large amounts of personal data. This includes data about people's bodies, behaviors, location, devices, and more. And as AI becomes further integrated into immersive technologies as well, the amount of data involved will only increase. Immersive technologies can often capture data that is not typically available in traditional consumer level technologies, such as eye gaze data or potentially in the future neural data. This data, particularly when aggregated, could be used to infer sensitive information about people, which could then be further used to make discriminatory or otherwise harmful decisions about them based on their race, sexual orientation, health, or other sensitive characteristics. And when these technologies are used in spaces with multiple people, bystanders may have their data inadvertently collected, often without providing consent, or even sometimes without being aware of it even happening in the first place. Because the amount and sensitivity of this data is a prime target for theft and other criminal activities, the primary way that cybersecurity is regulated in the US and the EU is through data breach notification laws. And the mechanisms that are in place for helping those affected deal exclusively with financial and identity-related data. So, for example, ID theft monitoring or credit card fraud monitoring. But there aren't mechanisms in place for when non-financial or non-identity data is compromised, such as personal photos or messages. So something akin to a reputation management service could be provided potentially to ensure that other personal data beyond financial data, beyond identity-related data, is also not being shared illicitly as a result of a data breach. In terms of regulation, whether and how metaverse data is covered under existing privacy and data protection laws depends on jurisdiction and the specific type of data in use. Talking specifically about privacy laws, metaverse data can be impacted by regulations on personal, biometric, sensitive location, spatial, health, and children's data regulations. And what emerging consumer-facing data-rich technologies like immersive tech and AI do is challenge our notions of how to categorize data types and uses, and thus how they are regulated. So to give you an example, in the US, the Health Information Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA, governs health data flows in the context of a relationship between a healthcare provider and a patient. But as consumer health and wellness products proliferate and health data moves out of the practitioner-client relationship and into the consumer market, HIPAA doesn't apply to this data, and the data doesn't receive the heightened protections that are reserved for traditional health data in the context of a healthcare professional and patient. In the US, a few states such as Nevada, Washington, and Connecticut have recognized this gap and actually passed consumer health privacy laws in 2023, and we expect to see that going forward as well. But beyond regulation, companies and developers need guidance on how to operationalize privacy principles in immersive technologies, as the way these principles play out on the ground may look different than they do on traditional web and mobile applications and devices. So for example, it's not always clear how to implement principles like data minimization or purpose specification and limitation in immersive spaces that require all of this data to be collected in the first place. And it's not always clear the most effective way to provide user controls or notice and consent mechanisms, or how these should look different in immersive spaces than they do in traditional web and mobile applications. So to that end, yesterday we at the Future of Privacy Forum actually just published a risk assessment framework for organizations that handle body-based data in immersive technologies to understand what their legal obligations are, what the privacy and safety risks their data practices may raise, as well as best practices for minimizing these risks. And while this risk framework is tailored to body-based data in immersive environments, it can also be applied to other kinds of immersive tech data and to body-based data in non-immersive contexts as well. So all that said, thank you again for organizing this very important roundtable on data protection and cybersecurity, and I look forward to a productive conversation.
Thanks, Jameson. If you have a few minutes, please put, if you can share the link for the framework in the chat, or we'll include it in our report. Oh, Kavya already beat me to it. Thank you. Madan, if you're back, we would love to have you finish your concluding remarks or takeaways from your talk. We lost you midway.
Thank you, Nandita. I'm not sure when the connection snapped, but let me take a guess. Probably I was talking about the challenges which are emerging, especially those relating to data security, privacy, and also about the potential harms which can be caused in the metaverse, and the legal gaps, especially around those which are the new crimes which are yet to be criminalized, because some of them are potential harms which most of the jurisdictions have not captured, and they cannot be called as crimes because they are harms, but not categorized as crimes by the legal statutes. And in this rapidly evolving security landscape, governance is becoming a complex issue. For example, what does actually constitute an avatar in legal terms? Is it a digital representation of an individual, or should it be considered as an extension of the user? Because depending on how we treat the avatar legally, the way the harms are criminalized would be important. Then data management also raises questions, as was mentioned by earlier speaker, also in terms of who collects the data, who manages this data, especially through Metaverse and through VR sets, and also in terms of interoperability, how the virtual assets, properties, and currencies will be interchangeable across different metaverses. But most importantly, who bears the responsibility for safety within the metaverse? Is it the government? Is it the service providers? Are these the platforms or the law enforcement? There are many complex questions for us to explore. In fact, we were discussing in the Interpol Metaverse expert group that as far as the responsibility for safety is concerned, there is need to define certain thresholds in terms of who should intervene, because it cannot be visualized that all kinds of harms or potential harms are referred to law enforcement that may kill the platform. So in that sense, there would be need for defining the thresholds in terms of when it should be a self-regulation, when the platform should impose something, and in some of the rare cases, when should the law enforcement be brought in. So those thresholds would need to be clearly defined. Another issue which is more transversal is the trust issue, which is complicating the matters and creating a key obstacle for effective law enforcement action towards crime. And bridging these divides and fostering cooperation would be of paramount importance as we strive to keep Metaverse safe and secure. It is only through collaboration, innovation, and responsible use of technology that we can ensure the safety and security of this virtual world. To achieve this, Interpol is committed to collaborating with various stakeholders in this ecosystem. And our efforts in this regard began last year through creation of the Interpol Metaverse Expert Group, in which we have held so far 19 meetings, and based on the discussions and inputs received from various experts, we are aiming to publish the white paper on Metaverse sometime in January 2024. As we dive deeper into this new digital frontier, it is crucial that we gather our knowledge and be ready to protect our communities. Responsible innovation and collaboration efforts would be essential to achieve this objective. I trust today's roundtable will be able to provide diverse insights and perspectives to understand and address this, I would say, multifaceted challenge, especially with regard to the AI-powered metaverse. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my viewpoints, and I hand it back to you, Nandita. Thank you.
Thanks, Madan. Next, we have Dr. Mohammed Khamis. Dr. Khamis is an associate professor at the University of Glasgow, where he leads research into the field of HCI, human-centered security. Dr. Khamis has made significant scientific contributions to the field of human-computer interaction and security. He has 100+ publications on related topics, including safety, privacy, security, and virtual reality. Over to you, Dr. Khamis.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me today. And thanks again to Kavya and the whole XRSI team for organizing this incredible event and very important and timely event. I work at the University of Glasgow. I teach human-centered security, and I also lead a team of researchers working in topics within human-centered security. And one of the main areas we are active in is trying to understand the threats that are brought forth by technology and developing human-centered mechanisms to mitigate them. So when it comes to the metaverse and extended reality, there are three main metaverse harms where I think, in particular, consumers and users of the metaverse are at great risk. I'll speak a bit about each of those very briefly. So first thing, which was actually brought up already earlier today, is privacy, of course. So Jameson was just earlier talking about the challenges of governing private data, and I agree, this is a very important to address because there's a huge amount of sensitive data and personal attributes that could be inferred from XR data. So for example, a lot of the XR headsets that we use, they have motion sensors. They have, some of them also come even with eye trackers. And different sensors just basically to provide the functionality that we need to experience an immersive environment. But then the data that is being collected by those sensors could be used to, for example, analyze movements. And by analyzing movements, you can infer things about people, and not just only about the users of those headsets, but also people that are around them in the physical world. And the problem is that this data could be misused. So imagine, for example, if I'm using augmented reality glasses, and they happen to be collecting 3D data of people around me. Now, how can I make sure that this data is not misused? We don't want someone to be walking around recording people, like 3D recordings or 3D models of people, and then using them later to create deepfakes. We don't want people to infer sensitive information about people around them, because, for example, if we take eye tracking data as an example, by tracking people's eyes, you can infer a lot of sensitive things that are usually not very intuitive to the person who's using the eye tracking technology. Things like mental states or even personality traits. You can infer people's gender and age, and you can also infer if someone is attracted to someone through their eye movements. So the questions here would be like, who would have access to this data? And how can we regulate the use of this data to reduce misuse and abuse? We also need to find the balance between regulation and making sure this data is used properly, but also if we restrict it too much, we basically render these technologies useless, right? So where is the balance? How can we achieve a balance? So the first aspect is privacy, as I said. Another aspect is safety. And when I talk about safety, I mean more safety as in physical safety. And also there's also, of course, mental safety or perceptual safety. So unlike many technologies, metaverse technologies impact our day-to-day physical activities. So you're wearing a headset, it's preventing you from seeing content like the real world around you. So the user is at a really vulnerable position. And one of the things that is being used in virtual reality, for example, is redirected walking, where people in a small physical room get the impression that they're in a big room, and they start to move in a way that is the view is manipulated slightly so that they feel that they're in an actual bigger room, right? So perception manipulation is a topic that has been in virtual reality for a very long time, but then it's actually quite scary, because if this is misused, we can start to see attacks similar to spear phishing attacks, which are targeting a particular person. We can see targeted perceptual attacks, where somebody could be guided into walking into a wall, for example, or to trip over something, or to walk out of a window, for example. Can, for example, augmented reality glasses project a virtual bridge where there is actually no bridge? So this idea of manipulating people's perceptions could get really dangerous. And of course, another different type of problems related to safety, and also not just regular adult users, but also child safety in particular, is the type of harassment or abuse that people could experience in social metaverse applications. We've already heard cases of children being exposed to inappropriate content in virtual environments, and we've also, there's been on the news talks about someone experiencing gang rape of her avatar in a virtual environment. And the problem is that these avatars that are representing us, they're actually optimized so that we would have a high sense of ownership and agency towards them, and an increased sense of immersion in this environment. So all of this contributes to making that any harm that is inflicted on this virtual avatar might potentially have a big impact on the mental health of the user of that avatar. And the third and final area that we are working in this topic and of metaverse harms is security. So basically trying to make sure that people we talk to are who they claim to be. So verifying people's identities. I think there's a lot of opportunities to use the same technologies, which I said have a lot of disadvantages, like things like XR sensing and so on, to actually enable biometric authentication and new forms of authentication and identity verification that could be far much better and more usable and also more secure than existing methods. So that's all I wanted to talk about for now. I'm looking forward to the rest of the discussions today.
Thanks, Dr. Khamis. Next, we have Peter Price. Peter, thank you for waking up super early to join us. We realize that it's like 6 a.m. for you. Peter is the CEO of Crime Stoppers in New South Wales and Director of Crime Stoppers Australia, Deputy Chairman of the Australian Government's Classification Review Board, appointed by the Governor-General of Australia. Mr. Price was also a director of the Internet Industry Association and is a venture capitalist. Thank you.
Good morning from where I am. Very good to be here. And as I listen to everybody speak, I'm just absolutely so happy that we're having this discussion. Excuse me. I think that we talk about things like human-centered design and things like that. We talked about community, we talked about privacy. All of these things matter. And I think that when I look at the group who are assembled here today and this entire week that we're collaborating on, I wish we could have done this more than 10 years ago. If I think about, when Web 1.0 started, excuse me, it was very much a technology revolution. And now we've spent the last 15 to 20 years basically playing catch up. I think that having these forums is absolutely critical, because what it does is it provides us with the tools to actually anticipate what might be happening down the line, and importantly, how we can create community resilience. So right from the outset of this discussion today, we've talked about community. And I think it's important that we don't forget that, at the center of everything that we're talking about is actually people like us, and we all have our lives, and we're all getting on with our lives. And we need to make sure that the technology that we're embracing is actually for the good and not for the bad. And I think that part of our mandate should be to look at all of these technologies, anticipate all of these criminal issues that might arise. But very importantly, we need to think about the positive side of what this can offer. And I know that as a security group of people, we often look at the negative side of things, and that's our job, is to look at risk. But I think when we look at risk, the flip side of risk is actually looking at community resilience. I think community resilience is 100% our top priority. Now, Crime Stoppers globally has been involved in essentially making communities safer since it was created in 1976 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we have spent, including myself, many, many years working with Interpol in various capacities, in various operations, making the community safer. But I think that at the end of the day, when we look at all of this technology, having forums like this and having us collaborate in this way is about increasing the community's ability to be safe online. I think that somebody refers to people as bad actors, and I think it's an interesting terminology. I'm not really being critical about that terminology, but I think when one talks about actors, you sort of think about people in theatre. When I look at the description of that word, I look at it, I'm going, these are just bad people, okay? These are bad people trying to do bad things to good people. And I think that our collaboration here is for social good. And the people that we are basically fighting every day, and from a security perspective, are there for social harm. So our two worlds are diametrically opposed. But on the one hand, the criminals are there looking to exploit for profit, and we're there to basically exploit for better community resilience and protection. So I am very heartened about the fact that we're collaborating like this. I think it's naive to assume that the people that we're fighting against don't collaborate. They collaborate extensively. The benefit that they have that we don't have is we have guide rails, we have rules, we have protocols, we have jurisdictions that we need to adhere to. They have none of that. So their ability to move at a much faster speed than us is to their benefit, but of course it is a hindrance to us. So I've spent almost 30 years, the last 30 years, basically looking at consumer behavior, influencing consumer behavior for the last 20 plus years, influencing consumer behavior from a security and policing perspective. And I think that, at the end of the day, we have to remember that we're dealing with people here. And I just finished a series of lectures just last week, mostly to an age group that is 65 plus. Okay, they are completely overwhelmed by what's happening in the environment around them, and they have very, very little tools to actually teach themselves to combat this situation. They have an expectation, for example, around the way that the age group is brought up. We are continually communicating with them about spam phone calls, and so we keep telling them, look, all you need to do is just hang up the phone. Well, this group of individuals at that age group, they are not used to hanging up the phone on anybody. It's not in their culture to hang up the phone on people. And now you're basically telling them to change their behavior completely and hang up on people. So I think it's important to understand who we're talking to and what our message is to those people. Some of the audiences will be much easier to communicate with, like the younger audiences. But then you have younger audiences like digital natives where they look at things like privacy and they go, whatever happens, happens. They throw their hands up because they don't really understand the value of the privacy. Like, what's the value of the data? How can someone use that data to manipulate a situation? So I think that's something that we need to sort of start thinking about and how we're going to communicate that. Thank you very much for your time today. Nice to see you all.
Thank you, Peter. And before moving on, also want to acknowledge Madan for being up so late. I didn't realize it was 3 a.m. for you. Thank you. Next, we have Anabi Becerril, Vice President, Mexican Academy of Cybersecurity and Digital Law. She's a professor and expert in topics related to law and information and communication technologies, cybersecurity, and human rights. Anabi was recognized as top women in cybersecurity Latin America in 2021. Over to you, Anabi.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to can share some points of view. Till now, there have been a lot of interest point of view, and I want to give you a more general context. Today, we find ourselves in this era that it's being defined by the intersection of two transformative forces, artificial intelligence and the metaverse. It's a new digital world that's full of exciting possibilities. However, as we embark on this journey into uncharted territory, a critical concern looms large: the safety and the security of our digital existence. The metaverse is a transformative force, reshaping our online interactions and by offering an immersive digital experience that engages all 5 senses and more. In this rapidly evolving AI-powered metaverse, the intersection of security and data protection has surged to the forefront of global concerns. This convergence intertwines with national security and the virtual realm in ways previously unthinkable. Gone are the days where cyber threats were confined to the digital world. Today, they pose the potential to ripple across societies, impacting human lives, economic stability, and even national peace. Identifying and understanding the evolving spectrum of cyber threats in the AI-powered metaverse and metaverse in general is essential to safeguard our digital future. The metaverse, in this immersive experience, are interconnected virtual realms, present a unique set of cybersecurity challenges. Here are some key aspects to consider: enhancing cyber attacks, deepfakes, and synthetic content, privacy and data protection concerns, phishing and social engineering, vulnerabilities in hardware, virtual property and asset theft, identity and authentication challenges, virtual currency and NFTs theft, and emergent threats, because we know that the dynamic nature of metaverse means that new and unforeseen threats may emerge. On the other hand, developing dynamic responsible data protection and privacy frameworks for this immersive digital environment is crucial to ensure the security and privacy for users. Here are some approaches and considerations to formulate such frameworks: data minimization and purpose limitation, privacy by design and by default, and security by design. So user content and control, data encryption, user authentication and authorization, data portability and deletion, data auditing and logging, data localization and jurisdiction compliance, regular security assessments, incident response and reporting, collaboration and standards, ethical use of data, and I think one of the most important, and having already seen, is that security awareness and training. We need to educate both developers and users about data protection best practice and the potential risks of the technology. And we know technology, all technology have risk, but we have to keep this education. We have to give them this development of abilities to know all the risk. Together, we need to promote this culture of security and privacy within the immersive environment. In conclusion, in this part, as we navigate this is exciting but complex terrain of the metaverse, it's imperative that we prioritize cybersecurity and data protection. A comprehensive strategy must encompass threat intelligence, state-of-the-art security technologies, user education, and robust collaboration among all the stakeholders. And that's one of my first views. I'm looking forward to keep the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Annabi. And to close off this session for contributor statements, we have Josefina Roman Vergara, the Commissioner of INAI. In 2013, she was appointed Commissioner of the Institute of Transparency, Access to Public Information and Protection of Personal Data at the State of Mexico and its municipalities. We have a video message from her. We'll play that and come back for session close off.
Buen día, buenas tardes. A nombre de mis compañeras y compañero que conformamos el Pleno del INAI y como presidencia de la Asamblea Global de la Privacidad, quiero agradecer a los organizadores la invitación para participar en la Semana de la Seguridad en el Metaverso 2023. Extiendo un cordial saludo a mis compañeras y compañeros de panel, así como a todas las personas que están participando en este evento de trascendencia mundial. Quiero comenzar esta conversación puntualizando que en un mundo digital interconectado no debemos caer en la tentación de sacrificar nuestra privacidad a cambio de acceder y utilizar tecnologías disruptivas. Esta es una falsa elección. En el INAI estamos conscientes de la importancia que las nuevas tecnologías están adquiriendo, así como de los desafíos que conlleva su uso. Hoy quiero hablarles de la protección de datos personales en los distintos mundos virtuales, metagalaxias y en el metaverso que está configurándose. El Parlamento Europeo ha definido el metaverso como un mundo virtual inmersivo y persistente en 3D, donde las personas interactúan a través de avatares para disfrutar de entretenimiento, realizar compras y transacciones con activos criptográficos o trabajar sin salir de sus asientos. El metaverso está creciendo de manera importante y se prevé que en el futuro cercano sea uno de los negocios más rentables. Tan solo en América Latina, de acuerdo con un informe de Analysis Group, el metaverso podría tener una contribución del 5% en el Producto Interno Bruto de la región para el 2031, lo que equivale aproximadamente a 320,000 millones de dólares. En cuanto al número de personas usuarias, de acuerdo con el portal Statista, la cifra estimada en 2023 asciende aproximadamente a 690 millones de personas en todo el mundo y no se espera que rebase los 1,000 millones hasta 2025. Ahora bien, al relacionar el metaverso con la protección de datos personales, es necesario reconocer en primera instancia que para ingresar al metaverso, los dispositivos electrónicos capturan y registran un número importante de datos personales, datos como nombre, edad, correo electrónico, así como datos biométricos, es decir, imagen del rostro, iris, huella digital o voz, entre otros. Además, Durante las interacciones en el metaverso, las personas usuarias también pueden otorgar información personal que en muchos casos será almacenada por los dispositivos. El tratamiento de grandes cantidades de datos, incluyendo datos personales sensibles, plantea riesgos para las personas usuarias. Por un lado, aumentarán los espacios para que las personas ciberdelincuentes accedan y utilicen de manera ilegal datos personales. Esto requiere necesariamente la adopción de medidas y regulaciones para proteger los datos personales desde una perspectiva de la ciberseguridad. Por otro lado, se prevé que uno de los principales riesgos derivados del mal uso de la información personal sea la usurpación de identidad, permitiendo que la persona delincuente cometa fraudes o delitos que afecten directamente a la persona titular de los datos. Dicho esto, se identifican al menos 5 retos que deben considerarse de manera previa al diseño y uso de las tecnologías que permiten acceder al metaverso. Primero, las tecnologías necesarias para acceder al metaverso pueden recolectar, almacenar y analizar grandes cantidades de información, incluyendo datos personales. Segundo, la información que se requiere para acceder al metaverso va más allá de los datos personales tradicionales, pues ahora son necesarios datos biométricos. Tercero, se debe especificar en los instrumentos jurídicos correspondientes para los delitos cometidos en el metaverso. Cuarto, el metaverso requiere de la transferencia de grandes cantidades de datos personales y datos personales sensibles. Y como último, las medidas de seguridad administrativas, físicas y técnicas que se prevean para proteger la información personal deben actualizarse para que resulten eficaces cuando se apliquen a las tecnologías que permitan acceder al metaverso. La complejidad del metaverso y de los riesgos asociados a la tecnología requieren de colaboración entre gobiernos, empresas y personas usuarias para elaborar estrategias que permitan fomentar su uso, pero al mismo tiempo garantizar un uso adecuado de los datos personales que se recolectan. Es por ello que las más de 140 autoridades de protección de datos de más de 80 países, miembros de la Asamblea Global de la Privacidad que el INAI tiene el honor de presidir, han puesto en la mesa de discusión los retos derivados del uso creciente de tecnologías de la información y la comunicación de vanguardia, incluyendo, por supuesto, aquellas que permiten entrar al metaverso. Por ejemplo, durante la 44 reunión de la GPA titulada Una cuestión de equilibrio, la privacidad en la era del rápido avance tecnológico, se hizo referencia explícita a la necesidad de adoptar enfoques que mantengan un equilibrio entre el desarrollo tecnológico y la protección de datos personales, sobre todo porque las tecnologías resultan cada vez más indispensables y necesarias, pero al mismo tiempo intrusivas. El metaverso, por supuesto, no es la excepción. Muchas gracias por su atención.
Thank you, everyone, for your contributions to the first session for the Metaverse for Safety Week Security and Data Protection Focus Roundtable. We'll take a 5 minutes break and come back for active contribution in the roundtable. My colleague Jordan Wiseman will be leading us through that, and feel free to take a coffee break and come back. I know a lot of you are joining us super early or super late in the night. Yes, the session will remain open, so feel free to go off camera and come back in 5 minutes.
All right, well, it's been about 5 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. We'll now resume the fourth edition of the fourth annual Metaverse Safety Week's roundtable discussion, focusing on navigating the cyber frontier in the AI-powered metaverse. My name is Jordan Wiseman. I'll be your moderator for the first thematic discussion. In addition to being on the planning committee for Metaverse Safety Week, I'm also a senior risk and technology advisor for XRSI, and I work as a fellow with Online Business Systems, where I work with customers from multiple sectors as a CISO, strategic consultant, and trusted advisor. The thematic discussion will we'll have about 20 minutes of discussion for folks who are interested in contributing to this. And let's review the focus of the discussion on the threat landscape in the AI-enabled metaverse, identifying risks and vulnerabilities. The subtopic delves into the complexities of the threat landscape within the AI-powered metaverse. As the boundaries between virtual and physical realities blur, the spectrum of cyber threats expands, encompassing traditional digital risks and novel AI-driven vulnerabilities. This discussion aims to dissect the nature of these emerging threats, highlighting how AI can be both a tool and a target in the metaverse. Panelists will explore the intricate web of risks, including data breaches, AI-based attacks, and new forms of cybercrime, emphasizing their potential to disrupt not just the virtual domain, but also the tangible world. This objective is to create a comprehensive overview of the current and foreseeable threats, paving the way for a more effective threat intelligence and risk management strategies in the metaverse. Before I begin, I invite Philip Aman to set the stage for us with a quick video that he sent for us. Philip is a globally acknowledged cybersecurity expert with over 20 years experience in cyber defense, policy, and governance, and he is known for successfully completing or leading complex projects. He combines technical expertise with exceptional leadership and communication skills, which has made him a key player in international cybersecurity initiatives and a respected speaker and author in the field. Currently, he works as the group CISO for the company providing postal services in Austria, as well as prior to that, he spent 9 years as a head of strategy in the European Cybercrime Center at Europol.
Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Philippe Aman, and I'm very happy to be part of this discussion panel. Before I start, I would like to thank the organizers for, first of all, putting together this very important event, but also for giving me the opportunity to be part of this discussion panel and to talk about my point of view when it comes to threats and risks in relation to the metaverse and the role of artificial intelligence and how this all comes together to create something great, but also something that comes with risks and challenges and how we can best approach those risks and challenges. Unfortunately, I can't be with you on site. I mean, that would be the greatest. Unfortunately, I can't even be online for the online discussion because I had some conflicting commitments. Hence, my short video message, but I do hope that I can get online to at least be able to participate in the discussion. Anyways, I'm very much looking forward to the interaction as part of this event. Now, we talked about the metaverse, artificial intelligence, and all those buzzwords. I think, and showing my age here, I think it is important to remember that a lot of those technologies have been around for quite a while. You think about artificial intelligence, some of the basic concepts that we still use go back to the 1960s. If you think about metaverse, I'm old enough to have played massively multi-user dungeons, I think it was called, on Unix systems, late 90s. And what was the interesting thing? That was completely text-based. And even back then, people were getting married, they had relationships, they had social lives online. So I think, the way we use metaverses, how we have a virtual life online, that's not new. It's been around for quite a while. And I think what we see now, especially also with artificial intelligence and large language models, obviously they've really, made the news recently. We see that convergence of technology. We see, the data that we can now store, the infrastructure that we have now at our, fingertips, so to speak, to exchange that data, all the, the new sensors that we have out there to collect new types of data. So there is this convergence of technology, data, which then also means that concepts like the metaverse are now, available to the masses, so to speak, to you and I, we can use those different environments. And hence it's really, really important to understand, the risks and threats that come with these environments. And I think another point I want to mention here is, Yes, there will be new types of threats. There will be new types of AI-powered criminal activity. But a lot of the things that we have been seeing and will be seeing is, traditional old crime, because, criminals will use what works, and they want to make money, and they will find a way to do that. And so just looking at some of the things that we already see in the metaverse and will be seeing is things like identity theft. It's going to be more interesting for criminals to steal your identity online, especially in metaverses that also allow, the exchange of assets, of digital assets and money. I think that's, a huge potential for criminals to get to your credit card data, steal your identity and commit maybe, other types of crimes offline and not within that metaverse environment. There's the risk of impersonation of individuals or organizations. Think about, organizations that want to set up a shop in the metaverse. If that gets compromised, there's a risk also of a loss of reputation. There's a huge risk when it comes to the invasion of privacy, because in addition to all, your name, your address and other, personal data that might get online, the way you move within the metaverse will create additional data that will allow companies and other parties to use that data. In some instances that will be part of the economic model or the business model of whoever powers that platform. But there's the risk that other criminals get access to that information as well. There's the risk of data breaches. There's the risk of phishing and scams, and an area where criminals may use artificial intelligence to improve their attacks, to emulate somebody's voice, a person that you may know, and simulate their face, and abusing that existing trust relationship, and then using that for targeted scams and phishing attacks, maybe with links that get you to download malware or viruses. Of course, there's also the risk of cyberbullying and harassment online, which already we've seen a lot. Again, this is an area where we need to do more to prevent that from happening, because think about it, unlike the real world, that might be limited to school environment. When we're talking about the metaverse, this is 24/7, 7 days a week. This is relentless and a huge problem. We spoke of the virtual assets, the fact that, we build our lives online. We have our, mansions, virtual mansions and cars online. And I mean, there are even designers that exclusively design virtual assets. You pay real money for that. If that gets stolen, that's a real loss. If it gets manipulated, think about NFTs, non-fungible tokens, that can be a huge loss. With that, obviously, there's a link to whatever currency is being used in a virtual environment. It could be virtual currencies, then there's the risk of theft of virtual currencies, or the risk of money laundering and other types of crimes related to virtual assets. But there's also the problem of child sexual abuse and things like grooming. And we had, for instance, think about one of the existing metaverse types of environments, Second Life. I think in 2007 there was the first case in Germany where there was an investigation into the depiction of child sexual abuse using avatars, and the question was, is that illegal? In Germany it is, because it's a depiction. It doesn't have to be a real person, but you get the idea. A lot of different risks and challenges. Now, this sounds very negative, but I think the point is we need to be aware of these things. We need to be aware of what's happening already now, how traditional crime will move and has moved into the metaverse, how new types of crimes, abusing artificial intelligence to automate attacks, to, find vulnerabilities automatically, to, improve scams and phishing attacks, how that will be used by criminals, and then build systems that are secure, safe, and resilient. That means we need to work together with industry, with academia, with all the relevant stakeholders, with user communities, and say, how can we work together to build a great virtual environment, a metaverse or metaverses that are safe and secure, that we can use to implement new types of business models, new types of interactions. And I think if we do so, and if we can mitigate together those risks and challenges, there's a great opportunity ahead of us. Thank you very much, and I wish you all the best for the other discussions.
I thank Philip very much for his contribution, and you know, not to date myself, but it takes me back to the days when I too was a mudder, and we also used to play those little games. And I think it's a fantastic reminder that a lot of what we're going to be talking about today related to risk and crime in the metaverse, these aren't wholly new ideas. These technologies are going to change things. There's going to be some new risks, but we're really talking about traditional crime and traditional issues as well. So let's move into the moderated discussion. We've got about 20 minutes here for folks, and I'd like to invite anybody on the panel who we've invited to contribute here to raise their hand for who wants to speak first, and we'll kind of give everybody about 2 or 3 minutes to reflect on the topic before we move into some really exciting intelligence gathering activity. So for anybody who would like to be elevated as a panelist, the folks we've had on here, go ahead and raise your hand and let us know who wants to contribute. Alvin, I saw your hand up. I didn't see the button, but I assumed that was you going first. Feel free. I think you're already on as a panelist since you spoke earlier. No, there's no audio coming through for you, Alvin. I think you might be muted. It looks like. Now we still can't hear you, Alvin. So I think maybe let's move on to Dr. Joshua Sipper, and we can come back to you.
Hi, Jordan. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Great, great. So I guess what I would like to offer is I come at the concept of cybersecurity, AI, all of the things we're talking about today from a couple of different directions. From what maybe we've heard thus far in the discussion. One is, and this is something I've discussed last year as a keynote speaker at the XRSI conference online, is that I look at the metaverse as a subset of a much larger reality that I call the cyber meta reality. It's kind of goes along with the title of my book that was published last year, The Cyber Meta Reality Beyond the Metaverse. So I think what we're dealing with here, and something that we need to be mindful of, is that the cyber meta reality is a larger piece that includes things like the dark web and deep web, in addition to the surface web that we are used to dealing with from a metaverse perspective. From a dark web perspective, obviously, you know, we can think about illegal activities like sex trafficking, human trafficking, drugs, ransomware gangs, you know, any number of things that we have to take into account when we're talking about safety from that level of engagement. And also, if you think of deep web spaces, there are so many areas with massive amounts of data that we don't really include in a lot of our discussions about extended reality and safety that deal with the deep web. And that goes all the way from military and government auspices down to corporate, down to even private local governments, things of that sort, that we also need to be mindful of when we're having this discussion. Another area is, the other area I would say is, I'm a professor of cyber warfare studies at Air University, which is basically the Air Force, United States Air Force's graduate school. And I'm at Air Command and Staff College. And so I actually direct the Cyber Advanced Operations and Strategy Seminar, or CHAOS, as we like to call it, which deals with, and I teach two courses primarily. One is on cyber intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. The other one is on cyber electromagnetic warfare. And so these are areas, you know, of defense applications. And we talk a lot about artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, nanotechnology, quantum computing, you know, all of these levels of where we're going in this reality. So I guess I would encourage us to be thinking along those lines, as well as what does safety mean from the perspective of a military member? What does safety mean from the perspective of someone who is in the auspices of government and trying to ensure safety from that level? So that would be what I would offer, and I appreciate that you've allowed me to be a part of this discussion. Thank you.
Absolutely, and fantastic points. I like the idea that safety means different things to different people, and as technology accelerates, so does the threats. People were just getting used to the fact that maybe their data was on the dark web or something, and now it's going to be even magnified in the metaverse. Alvin, let's come back to you. Did you get your audio sorted, we think?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Awesome.
Is it working?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right. So I heard a lot of people talking about how crime on, or kind of security on the metaverse will be very similar to the physical world, and I think in some aspects it will be that case, because it'll be a lot of the same actors or bad actors trying to take advantage. But there will be some significant differences. I think one of the biggest differences is that there's going to be a lot less borders, where right now most crimes that are happening are very local, where people are trying to take advantage of their of vulnerabilities or assets of people locally. Where when we actually have a true metaverse that is a interoperable, globally connected metaverse, those borders will go away, and the way that we enforce them will also be different. Because right now, most agencies are very either national or even citywide type of security, where we need to start thinking a lot more across borders and across nations, and the jurisdictions of who's going to enforce those issues. So some of those already have a play on the internet, but I think it'll be even more important going forward. The other thing is the ability to do hyper personalization will go up to an order of magnitude, because of the amount of information you have on individuals, the amount of ability to mimic who they are, or to impersonate them, using new technologies, and the type of impact you can have by doing that is something that would have been impossible before, but now becomes much easier with these new AI technologies. And then especially once we start relying more on a virtual world medium where you're represented by an avatar, it's even easier for a false person to impersonate you and to influence other people. Getting kind of false voices are already very easy to do, used and available technology today. False videos are very easy to create, and the automation of all of this will be significantly different than before, where before you have people calling you and impersonating people, so it's one-on-one, is very manual and not very scalable. But once you can start putting this onto systems that can be agents, that are automated agents, to be able to robocall a billion people, and to sound exactly like their children or their relatives or their boss, is going to be very, very achievable. Yeah. And then lastly, I think the amount of impact will be different, in the sense of, in the past, it was mostly about getting people's money or assets or something. If in the future we're spending 10 or 12 or 16 hours a day in some kind of a classes and some kind of a virtual world, which a lot of people will be. I mean, we're spending, I think, on average around 12 hours a day in front of screens today. And when you count into TV, computer, and phone screens, all of that will be replaced by a screen on your head, which you will wear when you wake up and you will take off when you go to bed. So the ability to influence you at all of these times, and to also, because these screens will also be able to do AR and MR and VR, so the ability to infiltrate both your virtual world as well as your real world, that level of impact will be dramatic. I think one of the speakers earlier was talking about, what if they put a fake bridge in front of a cliff? Those kind of things can be done, and yeah. It's very difficult with the current technologies out there. Even today, it's very difficult to tell when something is virtual. So so that's really an issue. And then also the level of dependency we will have on these systems, because at that point, when we go, right now it's just being, let's say somebody steals your identity, maybe you can't get onto your Facebook account. Okay, so I can't post or see somebody's, cat videos. But in the future, you're going to need these systems, identities to go to work, to go to school, to buy things, to essentially, by taking that away, you take away a person's freedom.
Right.
So it goes beyond taking away somebody's assets. So
Well,
the level of impact, once our dependency grows in the virtual space, the level of impact of cyber crimes actually also significantly increases. So a few things that we should probably keep in mind, that there are things that are a lot alike, but there are also things that will be significantly different. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really, really great point that the words we use to talk about, the differences between cyber and in real life and that kind of stuff now will really just become the venues for activity and stuff down the road. The differences in what is reality won't necessarily be as important. Andrew, I think you were the next one, had your hand up. Would you like to go?
Yes, sure. So quickly, I want to make an observation about what I see right now being included under data categories and data types. So there's a lot of talk about data and the danger that comes from data, including identity theft and all of the things we talked about. But the first thing that comes to mind when I see those is that they fail to cover what I believe is something that's not just poorly understood, but sometimes not addressed at all. This mysterious category a few people have mentioned of emerging threats, things we do not recognize yet. So I'm an XR developer, so I'm gonna talk now. If I'm gonna put my developer hat on and try to actually name a few things, name a little bit what those are. It is clear from me, from the work and from the testing sessions that we do, that these emerging threats fall into the psychological and cognitive category. So in addition to the data types and the data that's being collected and used in a certain way, they're just major cognitive and psychological areas that we just absolutely cannot afford to have a blind spot on. So from this perspective, I want to make another observation. It seems to me that we are looking at all of this, including the stuff I see on the data types like body, vitals, limbs, eyes, from the idea that we define identity and safety from the point of view of the human being who has 2 arms and 2 legs and a head. And I dare say that's not from the point of view of a definition of identity. If we're looking at the way young people interact with their avatars, and because of the immersive nature of virtual reality, at the cognitive and neurological level, the identification that happens with controlling the limbs and owning the limbs of your avatar and the image of the avatar, it's almost immediate. It takes, let's say, a few hours for that identification to happen. That means we have already moved away from doing regulation and laws and everything for a human being who identifies with a physical body with 2 limbs, 2 arms and 2 legs. We are already in the category where this newer generation has a much more complex identification with the reality and what they kind of look at and say, this is me. And I've run a bunch of again, I'm not an academic, so I do not run proper studies. I'm a developer. But in the small studies that we do for the VR products that we're working on, it is very clear that, and people are telling us sometimes without even us asking, because it is that strong of a feeling for them, that they are starting to identify more with a virtual avatar or with a certain behavior that's only available to them in a virtual world than with the physical world. So I would like to urge everyone to be a bit more out there because even if it still feels a bit sci-fi, it's actually not. It's actually not. That reality is here. We've started to form this definition of the modern subject as having a name, a gender, a picture, an ID. In the 1800s, in 801 was the first time a country did a population census. And that's because governments really wanted to know how many people they have so they can collect taxes. So each of us had to get a first name, a last name, and we had to, when a person was born, had to be registered, right? It's still illegal to give birth to a child and not register it. That's how the government, knows how many people it has, and that's really important. But we are already in the future. We're already past that definition of what a human being is and what we identify with, and what we identify not so much as mine. There was a lot of talk about property. So we identified the virtual house is my house because I pay for it. I want to propose that we are already at a point where it's not just that I'm saying the virtual house is my property, but I'm also saying the avatar is me.
Yeah.
So that's a much deeper level. And now if we run through the whole AI risk and dangers and promises from this lens, a lot of very, very interesting things are going to come out, more also interesting, but also quite scary. And I think it's also important, very briefly, for us to mention what exactly this AI promise and threat is, because we already know a lot of it from the way it has been used on social media platforms for the last 20 years. And we woke up to it very, very late. But we know exactly what it does in that context. The first thing it does is it knows things about you before you know those things. The second thing that it does is it makes you do and think things. And then it makes you do and think things in such a way that you think they came from you. You think you got the idea of doing that. That's how everything works on. That's how advertisement works right now, basically on social media. We know that. We already know that. So I think when we start to bring in these examples and these redefinitions and these data types and data categories, I think it's important to start to name things, start to put definitions on the tables, and start to also talk to developers, because we are seeing a lot of things. I think what's the responsibility of the developer is also a big thing. So it's the data that's being collected usually by the manufacturer of the hardware, but I also want to argue for developer responsibility in the behaviors that we are bringing to the table and we're encouraging our users to engage with. All right, I'm gonna stop there.
Oh, that was fantastic, Andrea. Thank you very much. And I love the idea that we need to keep in mind that not just the nature of the threats is changing, but the nature of what we're protecting and what it means. What is the thing we're protecting, and what does that mean? I think is incredibly important as well. Vivi, I think you had your hand up next, and then maybe Fox.
Yeah, thanks. So this is going to build on both what Andrea and Alvin said, and I'm going to keep my remarks very, very brief. But this idea that data is going to cross borders and jurisdictions is a reason to consider these kinds of crimes or violations of our metaverse data and our biometric rights as human rights. Once you digitize humans, once you digitize our brainwaves, our thoughts, our intentions, you can consider that digital footprint, that digital twin that you can create, or that avatar, that it's a spatial collection of our data, but it's our very selfhood, and it raises the stakes for protecting that data.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Fox, I think it's onto you now.
Yeah, I'll be quick as well. Just 2 points, and I think they've really been already brought up. One is kind of retargeting or redirection. And if we are thinking about the ubiquitous use of spatial computing devices and reality capture, the idea of bad actors getting us to walk off a cliff, I think may not be quite as direct as getting us to walk into a store that we didn't initially intend to walk to, right?
Sure.
Things like that. The second thing that I thought about as well was just kind of the social components, understanding what real actually is as opposed to what is synthetic. I think Andrea brought up a really good point, just the assumption that what we are interacting with or the engagement that we're having is organic is kind of assumed in the reality that we have now. I think as AI components are brought into these types of interactions, it's going to be almost impossible to distinguish what's real as opposed to what may be an ad. Just wanted to bring those two things up as well.
I appreciate that, Fox. That's a really good point. And as Andrea was talking about, we use these things for marketing now, and they're going to be turned for even more nefarious things down the road. And I think the dangers there are both interesting to imagine and become very real to people very soon. I think we have time for one more person before we move into the intelligence gathering exercise with Swarm AI. Quinn, you had your hand up last, I believe.
Sure. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Quinn Banks. Thank you for having me here. I wanted to pull on a couple of threads here and maybe even stir up the hornet's nest before we transition. I think we're
perfect time.
assuming that everyone's going to slap a headset on and run around all day with it. And I really don't see that happening. Just the barrier of getting someone to wear glasses or contacts is a challenge. And I actually wrote a paper called Beyond Screens with Spatial Computing Mixed Reality, that we would move into technology that wouldn't require a screen or require a headset, but would replace all of our screens and essentially create holographic images. So that it creates another set of cybersecurity challenges where now everything that you see is visual and beamed. How do you control that information? As well as how do you control what is being scanned and then being added into that experience. I would also add very briefly is we're also looking at multiple generations. This was part of the chat that was ongoing recently. And you have different generations of people who have different comfort levels with these technologies. I think Peter brought up, people 65 and older are not used to hanging up on people. However, I think my 17-year-old son has no problem disconnecting from someone. So taking in consideration that we're going to have to make sure that there is a level of transparency across different generations in order for people to adapt and understand. And I'll give a really good example. The other day, I was in a doctor's office and the receptionist handed me, the form that you fill out. And the back of it, it had this data rights document. So I'm reading through it. I'm like, okay, I understand this. I turned to her, I said, how many people actually understand what you have here and the implications of providing UCLA with all your medical data? And she says, most people have no clue. So why do you have it here? Or at least have it in a form where people can understand. And she was like, oh, can we hire you? I was like, that's not what I do. But that's the idea of making sure that as we transition to all of these different pieces of technology, that we pull everybody along with some level of understanding.
That's a fantastic point. Everybody's use and adoption and comfort with the technologies and the approaches needed are very important things that we have to adjust both our controls and our education for. Everyone needs to be prepared on what to do, prepared on what to protect themselves from, and prepared on what it means to protect yourself in these various venues that we're going on here now. Thank you very much, everybody who's contributed. And as Kavya said in the chat, feel free to continue the conversation in the chat and to send us. I believe there's a you can send things to info at info@xrsi.org or at metaversesafetyweek.org. But any of those data that we collect is going to be added to the post-conference report for folks to see. And so we want to make sure that we keep these really, really important conversations going. Now we want to move into the intelligence gathering portion for this, which is a great exercise using Swarm AI. And I'd like to introduce David Baltaxi to talk a little bit about how that works and to guide us through some of the questions. David.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is David Baltax. I'm the President and Chief Intelligence Officer at Unanimous AI. Unanimous AI develops technology that connects people together to harness and amplify their collective intelligence and enables groups to make better decisions, evaluations, and forecasts. Our technology is called artificial swarm intelligence. It's also known as swarm AI, and it's based on the extraordinary phenomenon known as swarm intelligence, which is nature's way of amplifying the intelligence of groups of its animals and insects. It's why bees swarm and birds flock and fish school. It's because they're smarter together when they are alone. Now, humans didn't evolve this capability, so we use advanced technology to bring these benefits to groups of any size: business teams, boardrooms, executive leadership groups, and even large organizations and communities. Our solutions have been used by the world's leading universities, as well as the largest financial institutions, market research firms, the United States Air Force, and the United Nations. Today, we'll use the Swarm AI platform to combine the knowledge, wisdom, insights, and intuitions of all of you, the conference speakers and attendees. I'm going to post into chat right now a link for everyone to be able to follow. I'll ask the meeting organizers please to make it available as well to all of the attendees. If you click on that link, it will open a new browser and join you into the Swarm platform. A quick note that, and I think Jordan might have mentioned this already, we are not collecting any personally identifiable information beyond anything that you've already provided consent for. In fact, we go out of our way not to collect PII at all. As you join into the Swarm session, I do want to point out that we recommend using a computer or tablet and not mobile devices for today. I don't think that's going to be an issue for most of us. Great, I can see people are joining now. If for whatever reason you are not able to connect or to participate in the Swarm portion, the data collection that we're going to do, we will be, I believe we'll be sharing on Zoom so that you'll be able to watch there. But we do hope that you will participate if you can. So today, as I said, we're going to combine all of our input with the Swarm AI technology to gather insights and unlock the collective intelligence of the group. When you put your mouse next to the spinning puck, you will see that it will turn into a magnet. Please go ahead and try that. If for whatever reason you're having any difficulties, just try refreshing your browser. You'll note that your magnet is green and everyone else's magnet is gold. Use your magnet to pull on the puck. In a moment, I will present a question and a set of answers will be distributed around the screen. And our goal is to work together to converge on the best possible answer that we can within 60 seconds. So pull for the answer or answers you believe in, but remain open to compromise if you think it's appropriate, so that an answer can be arrived at in time. A couple things to keep in mind, a few things to keep in mind. The closer your magnet is to the puck, the stronger your pull. You don't have to click or swipe, just simply keep repositioning your magnet so it's pulling in the appropriate direction. You'll need to pull continuously with your magnet during each answer. If you're not pulling on the puck with your magnet, you have no impact on the or influence over the outcome. Again, our goal is to work together to converge on the best possible answer we can. Let's try a warm-up question to make sure everyone knows how to move the puck. I'm going to post that right now into Swarm. And what was the most important invention of the 19th century? Set your magnet during the 3, 2, 1 countdown. And let's see if we can work together to identify which of these we think was the most important invention of the 19th century. Great. Looks like everyone has the hang of it. You'll note in the bottom right corner there, we have a conviction metric. It shows 70%. That is an indicator of how well aligned the group was as it answered this question together. A quick reminder that the closer your magnet is to the puck, the stronger its pull. And you just simply need to reposition your magnet so it stays somewhat near the puck to reflect your level of confidence or conviction. All right, we're going to start with our questions right now. And I'll post the first question now into Swarm for your consideration. Which of these areas of metaverse-related risk do we think is the most dangerous? I'll give you a moment so that you can review those. Now set your magnet during the countdown so that we're collecting your input from the very start. Let's see if we can work together to identify which one we think would be the most dangerous. Good distribution of opinions here. We have about 30 seconds left. Let's see if we can find a compromise position. Is there one of these that we can agree might be the most dangerous option? All right. There was a lot of strong opinions here, and frankly, I'm not surprised to see the brain freeze. Brain freeze is not a bad thing. All it does is indicate that we had enough conviction and enough different choices that we weren't able to converge on a single one. There at the very end, we definitely had a lot of support for consequences of metaverse threats in the physical world and AI-enhanced cyber threats within the virtual world. But throughout the deliberation, there was clearly a lot of support for the other options. I do want to quickly just mention that we are not suggesting that any answer that we pick is the only good answer. It's very clear that these are all good answers and that we can consider them in parallel as well. Jordan?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, David. And I would also like to point out that that list of answers wasn't exhaustive. I mean, there could be a lot of different things, but it's interesting that, of course, on the first set of questions around risk and threats, we wound up with not a clear winner or a clear answer from everybody. So for each of these questions, we want to take just a minute or two for folks to raise your hand and contribute if you'd like to, just as a reflection of this. And I would say maybe the first thing to consider is the fact that we didn't all agree on a single threat, which means that there's probably a lot to deal with. Who wants to comment first? And if we don't see any hands, it's fine. We can go on to the next question. I mean, this is obviously a very complicated topic, and probably nobody wants to. It's a difficult thing to try to land on just one thing as a critical threat. Divya, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, this was really difficult. The only reason I chose, actually, I was leaning towards the sensitive data, PII, et cetera. It's for the same reason I had described before. All of this data is going to be combined to actually create your digital selfhood. And if you can't protect your digital self, none of those other things matter. In fact, all crimes are amplified, all threats are amplified. So right. I don't know if there was really a great first choice.
Yeah, no, I had almost exactly the same approach that you did. As I started with that, and then headed down towards maybe real world effects, because I think that's kind of what we're all getting at here. Amal, you have your hand up next.
Yeah, so just to add on to what Divya said, I completely agree with her. So I was also leaning towards sensitive data, PII, because when we look at AI security, a lot of the adversarial attacks, so attacks to AI, basically would result in a loss of PII, sensitive data would be breached. So then later I was talking about, that AI can be attacked, and that will yield basically all of those other threats. So again, it was a very difficult question.
Yeah, absolutely, and a great point. Everything leads back to some effect on the individuals involved, right? Matthew, I think we have time for one more comment, then we can move on to the last question.
All right. So. I was going towards the physical world because there's a heck of a lot more that could happen beyond just what was labeled as A, which is like I agree with the last couple of speakers, but but there's so much more that could happen, which is why I was there. But from an interesting perspective, and I hope what I'm going to say is going to impact the rest of this. There's a little bit of groupthink because it was in the center in the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we all kind of start to coalesce. People were persuaded towards ANF just based on some of the other magnets coming there. So I'm curious to know why people maybe change their minds mid debate, if that's what we call this, and why we ended up coalescing along those two things. So curious to see how that plays out for the rest of these.
Well, I think that's a really great point and kind of gets at kind of the nature and the reason we're using this Storm AI tool. And David could talk to that a little bit, but I mean, frankly, we could spend hours talking probably about those reasons alone, let alone all this question. David, back to you, and let's go on to the next question.
Yeah, just real quickly, as we said, all of these options are probably going to be challenging to select one, right? So what we hope is that everyone's going to start pulling for their top choice, be strong about it. But then if they are willing to work together and try and converge on a choice that we can identify. As you'll see, all of the data is being collected. We will be sharing all of the results of the sessions in follow-up reports, and you'll be able to see how that all plays out. Rather than go down to the rabbit hole of the power of swarm intelligence for this group. Let's move on to the next question right now. Was the call for pausing AI a good way to reduce risk? You'll see the yes options are on the left and the no options on the right. All right, excellent.
That is a really, really interesting result. I love the fact that it started with, everybody, it seemed like not everybody, but the majority of folks seemed to think that the pause was not a good idea, but not necessarily for the same reason. Although we coalesced on the fact that genie's out of the bottle, so to speak. Everybody knows about AI, and it's too late to pretend that we're not doing it and don't know anything about it. Let's get a few minutes to reflect on these items. Kavya, you have your hand up first, actually.
Yeah, because of the unpopular opinion that it was actually a good attempt. And I am going to cite Dr. Louis Rosenberg, who, along with me, signed that call for pause and stated that, yes, we all are aware that it's too late to put the genie back in the bottle, but that call drove attention from so many multi-stakeholder groups to be like, what is this thing? What are they talking about? So that was the ultimate intention and result, knowing that we couldn't pause because there is China, there's all these other countries developing, but the net outcome was people kind of shook up and like, hey, what are they talking about? They're talking out of their minds. This is not going to happen. So it stirred that attention in the right direction. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think that's a really good point. Whether we resulted in an actual pause or not, it got people talking about it and thinking about it, right? I had kind of the opposite thought where I didn't necessarily think the pause was a good idea, primarily because of those other actors going forward. And I recognized that a pause, getting everybody to agree on pausing, even for how long or at all, was probably not likely. Do we have another comment, or should we move on to the next question? I see there's been some in the chats, but. All right, David, why don't we go on to question number 3?
Great. Question number 3 has to do with threat actors. Which metaverse threat actor is the most worrisome? And again, can we get to a consensus answer?
Feel like we need some live sportscasting. AI acting on instructions, taking the lead. Nation states starting to come in and pull away with a victory.
Yeah. Or some music maybe while we're all trying to decide, right?
Autonomous AI
like
coming
we're
in
getting
from
closer.
behind.
That turned into a real tug of war there at the end. Clearly a lot of strong opinions around this, and again, probably lots of good choices as well.
Yeah, definitely. So, I would encourage folks to put their hands to talk about this one. I think, my opinion might be that we landed on AI with instructions versus autonomous because we know humans' goals and why doing this kind of stuff, and maybe AI's goals are inscrutable so far, or less likely to be quite as criminal in mind. Joshua, you had it in first. What do you think?
Yeah, I posted something earlier in the chat about, there are, and this goes back to my discussion about sort of the balkanization of the metaverse. You have nation states like China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, and others that look at data very differently than, say, we do in the West. For instance, there are very few personal rights in those particular nation states, and they gather lots of information on personal, on personal activities. I mean, you hear of the social metering system that they have in China, very intrusive into personal rights, but China is also building their Belt and Road Initiative into the Middle East, Africa, and South America, and gathering data on people in those countries and continents and nations as well. So I really firmly believe that there is an extremely dangerous precedent being set by these nation states who are not just reaching for data from their own people to control their own populace, but even trying to use that data granularity to do the same kinds of nation state control, of other populations. So I'd offer that.
Absolutely, and I would say it's interesting to note that the threats we're talking about, there's both a very timely now aspect to some of them, and then there's some of the, as folks have said in the chat too, we don't necessarily know down the road what AI threats are going to look like. Mohammed, you had your hands up next.
Yeah, so if I was able to pick all of them, I would have picked all of them. I think
all should have been a good choice, right? All of the above.
I think also, like, I noticed because there was like a gravitation towards the options in the top right, but I also want to highlight, even for individual actors, the range of harms they can inflict on others are also going to like increase exponentially, and because the reach to like reaching vulnerable people in particular, like children, people with disabilities, or people who are marginalized populations and so on, will be much easier, and escaping accountability is going to be easier. I mentioned the chat thing, like when there were discussions about social engineering, about how a lot of the threats that existed many years ago, they sort of developed and started to look different, but the concept was still the same. Like in the 19th century, early 19th century, there were scams that are very similar to the advance fee scams that we get by email today. It's just that the medium changed. So it's important to see like how the metaverse and AI technologies will modify these types of attacks, because a lot of them will be the same attacks, just using different mediums. But then also thinking about what are new possibilities that were not possible before, beyond just scale and reach and so on. What are things that were not feasible using? And I think when I spoke about perceptual manipulation, this is, for example, a very, very, very different type of attack compared to what we currently have on mobile phones and desktops and so on. So we need to think about all of those things at the same time. And yeah, it is hard to pick one. That's the challenge.
Yeah, absolutely great point. I think, the idea that, the telegraph in the 18th century started making the world a small place, as the adage goes, and Metaverse is now going to make multiple worlds small places, I suppose, in terms of victims and attacks, and even just general interactions beyond, not thinking about just risks and threats, but I mean, part of the attractiveness of these technologies is enabling that kind of stuff for legitimate uses as well. Matthew, I think we have time for one last question. You have your hand up, and then we can go on to the next swarm question.
I was pulling for the individual, and here's my thought process behind that apparently unpopular opinion. At least right now, AI is not a self-thinking thing, that there are still people behind it. When we get to the point of artificial general intelligence, maybe it's right to call that thing an individual. Also, there are how many nations, right? How many large language models right now? How many people are there? Just from like a pure numbers game, you're giving the power of nuclear weapons to an individual. And with 3D printing coming along the way that we do, how do we know some person with AI is not going to create the next bioweapon using the next generation or soon to be generation of 3D printer and release it upon the public? I'm very scared for what individuals can do now with this sort of power at their fingertips.
Okay. Yeah. Great point. I mean, it's gonna maybe democratize warfare, so to speak, or maybe that's too strong a word, but yeah, the threats will come from more than just nation states, in the future with these things. David, let's go on to the next question. And I think for everybody, we're running much short on time, because this is such an exciting topic and worth going on about. So I think we've got about 2 questions left, I think, and so after each one we'll have time for maybe one reflection, and we'll go on to the next question. But please contribute more in the chat. Let's keep the conversation going, and as I said before, there's other venues to keep spending data as well. David, back to you.
Yep, thank you, Jordan. This is question 4 of the 5 that we have scheduled for right now, and I am now posting the question into Swarm. Which AI harm has the most significant, or will have the most significant impact on society today? Has the most significant impact on society today. Let's make it present tense.
Again, this is another one we should have added an all of the above option, huh, David?
All right, 65% conviction, which for this group actually is pretty strong. I will just quickly mention, we still have deliberately left out the none of the above or all of the above options, because we are trying to engender this conversation.
Great.
So, yeah.
Thank you very much. So we've got time for one reflection. Is somebody who wants to go first? Fox, you beat everybody else.
I think we're being reactive in some ways. Given what we've seen with social media networks and mass communication platforms, that answer is a bit predictable, right? Misinformation is something that we've all experienced in some way and has been in the news nonstop, essentially for almost an entire decade now. So it's a thing that we are perhaps projecting forward from recent previous experience.
It's a great point. We may be priming ourselves a bit here and kind of falling victim to same exactly some of the threats that we've been discussing earlier today, and not maybe fully considering all of the options there, right? David, let's go on. We've got I think one or we have 2 more questions or 1 more question.
This is the last question for this group, and the question is: what is the most common AI-related challenge faced by organizations? Most common. All right. Jordan?
Hey, thanks, David. Yeah, I think in that one, there were a lot of opinions again, but we kind of quickly got to lack of awareness. And I think, I suspect that was generally because we all agree that not fully understanding the risks and use cases is probably the biggest risk everybody faces. We've got time for one reflection before we get to the break between this section and the last one. Anybody want to take it? Sylvia, please.
It's just like a funny story. I work at FDA. They want to use a chat box. They wanted to use it the wrong way. They wanted it to they wanted it to give people instruction how to use one of their web pages. And the Digital Health Center had to tell them that's not really what a chat box should be used for. So I work in the commissioner office and they didn't even know what a chat box would the best use for a chat box would be. They just wanted to use it because it's a new shiny toy, which I think is the problem with using AI. People don't, and this is a federal agency here. So it was like a little joke to like the IT people, like, why would you want to use it for something if you don't know what it is? But they just wanted to use it.
Yeah, that's a great example of kind of underscoring that problem, that awareness is maybe a bigger problem than some of our various organizations and interest groups have fully appreciated it is yet. So thank you very much, everybody, for your contribution so far. And I know we barely scratched the surface on most of these topics, but it was a fantastic threads, and I strongly encourage everybody to keep the conversation going, keep engaged, keep lending your expertise to these questions because they are so important. And now we've reached time for a break. We were originally going to take about 20 minutes, but I think we're going to try to cut this one down to just 15. Which isn't much of a quote unquote lunch break, I know, but that way we can get back on track and try to get everybody out on time today. So let's take a break for about 15 minutes, which means we'll all come back at, I guess that would be 22 minutes past the hour, 23 minutes past the hour. The session will stay open, but feel free to turn cameras off or whatever you need to do. Thank you very much.
All right, looks like we are back. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a nice brief break. Mine was great. I got the chance to have a little cup of tea in the meantime. So now we will resume the 4th annual Metaverse Safety Week edition's roundtable discussion on navigating the cyber frontier of the AI-powered metaverse. Many of you know me. I'm Kavya Perlman. I'll be your moderator for this second thematic discussion today. I'm a security researcher and also the founder and CEO of X Reality Safety Intelligence, the organizer of Metaverse Safety Week. We are headquartered in the vibrant San Francisco and also in Europe, in Torino, Italy. This thematic discussion will include 20 minutes of moderated discussion where anyone from the active contributors can raise their hands and add their 2 to 3 minutes remark on the subtopic. The open discussion will be followed by, again, an intelligence gathering session where all observers and contributors can take part by responding to a strategically curated questionnaire via Swarm AI. At this time, no personal data will be collected beyond what is already permitted, and the aggregate output will be used to gather and recorded in a published in a post-roundtable report. So let me now review the focus of this thematic discussion. Fostering resilience. I know we've talked a lot about the threats just thus far, and I even heard a thing mentioned, kind of negative. The way I look at it personally is these are very positive discussions because we actually get to talk and solve these issues beforehand. What more positive could be? But then we're going even farther to now think about fostering resilience, data protection, and response strategies in the metaverse. So in this session, we'll address the increased need of robust data protection and effective response strategies in an ever-evolving AI-powered metaverse. As we witness the deeper integration of AI and immersive technologies, the protection of user data and privacy stands as a critical concern. Our focus today will be developing some adaptable, comprehensive data protection framework that align with the dynamic nature of metaverse. We've gathered experts to share their insights on crafting effective response protocols, aiming to manage and mitigate the impact of cyber incidents effectively. So we'll use afterwards Swarm intelligence gathering, where we'll again collaboratively engage with all these industry leaders, policymakers, global community members that we have gathered here today. And these measures are designed not to just defend against current threats, but also to anticipate the future and what could be done to ensure trustworthy, secure cyber environment for the metaverse user. So let's get to it. But before we begin, I would like to invite Pablo Corona, the president of the Internet Association for Mexico, to set the stage for us with their 5 minutes intervention. Pablo is a PhD candidate in science, specialized in applied AI for cybersecurity, master's in IT management, and system engineer. Pablo has been working for normalization and certification for NYC for over 18 years, serving as a VP for cybersecurity and digital health in the Internet Association of Mexico, and an advisor in multiple public and private organizations across various sectors. So Pablo, with that, please set the stage for us and take it away.
Thank you. And do you hear me well? Good.
Yes.
Okay. So I would like to start with a famous quote, because what is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, smell, taste, or see, then real is simply an electrical signals interpreted by your brain. So that's that very old quote, and it's a movie's quote, but now it could be the definition of the metaverse. Maybe the metaverse today is only what we can see and hear, but soon we will have taste, we will have smell and other feelings and senses enabled by the metaverse. So the integration of the AI to the metaverse, while it's been innovative, it introduces complex changes in data protection, because the AI systems, by their nature, requires a vast amount of information and data to be learned and evolve. The data is often personal and sensitive data that is used for training, and is the lifeblood of the metaverse. So the risk that it poses cannot be overstated, especially within this world that is invaded by post-truth and misinformation. Because a breach in this environment is not just a breach of data. And it's not just bits and bytes. It's a breach of trust, a breach of the social fabric that join us. This can include very intimate digital space data and intimate information from people. For more and more activities we are conducting in the metaverse, buying things, visiting places, knowing people, paying taxes, we start to do things in the internet, and eventually this will be moving to the metaverse or the different metaverses. So this brings a main focal point. Developing comprehensive frameworks for data protection requires adaptive and dynamic nature rules regulation for the metaverse. Traditional models for data protection are maybe not that flexible, or maybe are a little stiff, and doesn't handle the fluid and expansive nature of this new digital realm. We need to adapt and make agile frameworks that can evolve as rapid as technology itself. User privacy and anonymity is one of the key we need to focus. Protecting identity of personal identification as critical, implementing privacy by design principles, and ensuring that data is collected, processed, stored, and not most used in any way for confidentiality purposes. Anonymization techniques is a way of doing it, but remember that AI is primarily the de-anonymization technology. So if it's not correctly used, it can be a danger itself. Privacy and anonymity need to be protected using identity and personal identifying information with robust data encryption. There has been different voices saying that encryption should be backdoored, and the metaverse can be one of those that can be tried to be backdoored. I think that the encryption is one of the rights that people has to get end-to-end in all the transmissions, and it's occur in a low or high scale because of the sensitivity and the privacy we need to protect. Also, we need to focus on AI security. AI security is vulnerable to different attacks like model poisoning, adversarial attacks, as well as biases from the training data that can be resulting in training and biased results. So ensuring that the AI use the right algorithms, the right data for training and operation is crucial, but then consent and lawful basis for the use of information is also crucial. And security authentication mechanism to ensure the metaverse as an immersive technology authenticates that someone is who is claiming to be, and you can identify that a child that you are playing with is actually a child, or the other user you are interacting with is the user they are trying to do is very important. So using multi-factor authentication, biometrics is one way of doing, but also poses another risk because we need to protect this data. So consent and transparency for users to have a clear information on how their data will be used and controlled. Consent for if this data will be used for training any other artificial intelligence technology, it's important. So how we ensure informed consent in the experience as rich and engaging, like the virtual reality or any metaverse, is blurred. We need to adapt this and create new lawful ways of gathering information that be dynamic and inform the actual user. And in the end, let me close by saying that we need to focus on incident response doing security audits, updates, cross-platform security, and compliance with different regulations across the world, with user education and awareness that is adapted to the context of the person. Maybe a young person doesn't see the risk of sharing everything they do on the internet. But if you show them how it is from their pictures or videos to someone know their home address and knock at their door, they will have this sense of awareness. So to close, it's important also to distinguish between the risk of the current status and capabilities of the AI and the particular and eventual artificial general intelligence and artificial strong intelligence, because today we don't have those, and we need to have, number one, clear thresholds of what are the milestones that we can measure and know that we have reached this. And this will require a lot of resources, of computational resources, so we can monitor and establish thresholds of when this can be worrying. And also, rules and regulations should not inhibit innovation, because this should not disable organizations and people to use tools, because by definition, criminals will not follow the rules. So AI requires considerations and decisions that should not only be made by technologists or programmers. This requires people with experience in ethics, social sciences, governance, and many other people like this forum. So I'm very pleased to be here, and I hope this starts the conversation properly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pablo. All those points that you're mentioning, every time I'm just nodding, because, you know, we're at XRSI, we're working on some authentication protocols research, same dilemma about the data versus, you know, seamlessly authenticating people, and that requires data. Likewise, I really loved your Agile framework. So like XRSI privacy and safety framework is like same exact type of a approach. And I couldn't agree more about this dynamic visualization about risk, because, you know, and Dr. Divya Chandra agrees there as well, is we can, you know, use these technologies to potentially mitigate. So let me again just remind that we are looking at potential building resilience, potential solutions, what approaches, strategies we should be thinking about. So let's get out of the sort of a mindset of what those threats were, knowing what these are, knowing what they could be, what should be our approaches. And so I invite our panelists to chime in and sort of provide 2 to 3 minutes reflection, and it's an open discussion. I'll be quick to chime in if it's going too long per person, so allow everyone an opportunity. And I already see a couple of hand raised. Dr. Joshua Sipper, so floor is yours.
Thanks, Kavya. Thanks, Pablo. Those are really great points. I wanted to bring up one thing briefly from a conference that I attended in Porto, Portugal, is the International Academy Research and Industry Association Cyber 2023 conference, where I had a paper published. But we talked a lot there from many different perspectives about the whole artificial intelligence black box. You know, you've probably heard that a lot, and I think we've kind of been talking around that a little bit here today in this discussion. I don't know that I've heard it specifically mentioned, but one of the strategies that was mentioned during our discussions was to try to use, and this is going to sound interesting or maybe strange, but to use artificial intelligence to monitor artificial intelligence, to essentially build what we would call a glass box. And that's something I think from a security perspective, especially using artificial intelligence, that we need to start considering, because our markets, our stock market right now is very heavily AI driven. And there are a lot of people very scared of that, because it is to many people a very obscure, opaque way of running things. They don't know exactly what the AI is doing, or quote unquote how it is thinking. And so I would just offer that maybe we should start thinking really, really strongly right now about how we're going to create that glass box model, instead of kind of carrying on with this opaque model of the black box that we're sort of in right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Sipper. And I would, note that specifically for notes taker, the glass box. Actually, honestly, first I've heard. So that is a very, novel way to probably think about it. But I'll look it up more. And so next, I want to go to Vance Lopton.
Hi, thanks, Kavya. So I'm from a privacy regulator, from the federal privacy regulator in Canada. And I guess the one thing I wanted to say is I agree broadly on the need for kind of an agile regulation, but I think, or agile frameworks. But I think what we have to be careful about is not expecting that in legislative frameworks. I would anticipate what we're going to be getting right now is kind of a next generation of kind of AI focused laws. And that's what we're going to have to work with for next 10, 15 years. They're not going to fundamentally change much. So I think what I would be promoting is finding ways to work within those laws, as opposed to kind of having much of a push to change them once they're in. What we're seeing in a lot of privacy laws are opportunities for codes of practice or certification programs that are kind of built by industry and other stakeholders who kind of really know what compliance could actually mean. We're seeing opportunities to engage with regulators, like Alex White in Bermuda. They have a privacy sandbox program. A lot of places have privacy or have AI regulatory sandbox programs, something we're interested in. So I think finding there are going to be opportunities to engage with regulators. Regulators know we don't know everything and kind of need to be working with industry and working with experts to actually figure out what effective regulation and effective protection is going to look like. So I guess that's my big thing is don't overly focus on changing a legislative framework. It's going to be much more effective to work within the ones that exist or will exist in the next few years.
Thank you, Vance. And just to quickly, I want to note alongside, when COPPA, Children Online Privacy Act in the United States, when it is being updated, that's where we sort of find the opportunity to provide insights. And I think that could be another way alongside, updating the existing ones that can provide protection. Thank you for your reflection. And now I want to go over to Andrea.
So this is my thought on regulation. I think we should absolutely have these conversations. We should regulate at the government level and on other levels as well. But what I think is missing sometimes from the conversation is at least an acknowledgement of the need to have a vision of the future that we want to regulate towards. Because right now, if we regulate based on the definitions and the way current society works, that's just a no-go, because the current society is not working for a lot of people for many, many reasons. So we cannot regulate so that the current version of our society continues the way it is. At least I don't believe we can or we should. So we have to regulate for change. But we cannot regulate for change if we don't align on what that change is, and we don't have the right people in the right places with a vision to take us there. There was city-states were mentioned as a potential threat in one of the exercises that we did. And the one thing that I will give city-states and the people behind them is that they're very big on visions for the future, on dreaming alternatives for society. And we might not agree with what they are, but I do give them points for daring to dream about a different society. And I think I don't think regulators can afford not to engage in that exercise, because again, I believe we need to regulate towards something better and towards change, not to regulate to keep anything the way it is right now.
Well, first of all, I'm really thankful that you're here. For us, starting 2 years ago when you shared the conversation about who am I in the metaverse, the philosophical aspect of our identity, until this very moment. there is so much to gain from everything that you share. So I really appreciate, Andrea. In the interest of time, I would love to go to Pablo as next.
Thank you. First of all, I really liked Andrea's what you say, and the glass box concept is also a nice concept. So we need to. You talk about resilience, and we need to focus on how to create that resilience. And I see different activities. One is the thing about awareness and training. We need to avoid the gatekeeping and enable knowledge sharing and lessons learned sharing. But also there is in cybersecurity, also someone says frequently that the weakest link in the chain is a user, and you need to focus on training, and that's good. And we not need to forget about training, but the weakest link will be weak forever, and the person can be susceptible to scams. So we need to enable more monitoring to prevent, detect, stop incidents, and that's important. But at the same time, use effective incident response protocols in place to ensure that the mechanism for this identification and assessing is correctly identified, but respecting the rights and the privacy of the users. And on the other side, use regular audits and updates with different levels of risk. I mentioned risk before, but risk is not the same using artificial intelligence just to create a game or to impersonate a person or to collect different type of data. So we need to introduce a risk-based scenario involving when a person is in between. For example, in a health solution, if someone is only suggesting a solution by the AI, but the final decision is a person, is a lower risk than if an application is trying to create a consultation or a prescription without the intervention of a person. So those level of risks are very important for creating resilience and creating solutions that enable the user to feel free and protected in the physical or metaverse.
Thank you, Pablo. Thank you so much for your reflections. And I did see other hand raised. If we want to just kind of wait, Jordan, your hand is raised. Please go for it.
Yeah, I know we're running short on time. I just had a quick comment about, Paulo and Andrea both talked about the need to prepare and have solid incident response for these kinds of issues in terms of resiliency. And one of the things that I've been talking a lot about with people in terms of ransomware preparedness, especially these days, is it's not enough to have the plan and to walk through the plan via tabletop exercises, but you have to actually simulate the plan so that you know how well your efforts to handle whatever the incident that you're dealing with is, as well as how effective your recovery, your business continuity steps would be in the event that things actually go wrong. In other words, don't just put it on paper, make sure you can actually follow the plan, execute the plan, and that it will actually, in fact, work for you while you're dealing with whatever the problems are.
Right. And thank you, Jordan. And if I may just quickly add, and I've tried really hard to refrain using this term that I learned from one of our advisors, Dr. Janet Johnson, and she's probably going to work on this particular aspect of research. So I definitely want to credit her on this. We talk about this, human-centered design and other design aspects, but in this very uncertain future, she really wanted to emphasize, when I met her in person, is the design for uncertainty and having a thorough, research set of things where we really don't know what we should be preparing for. And so if we design our systems that way, and I don't know about the regulatory aspect because that I leave it to the experts, but certainly for, we could talk about safety by design, but designing for uncertainty would probably be one of the things, because we really don't know. This is really uncharted territory with this convergence of technologies. So I also see Scott Phillips' hand raised. I would take that as a last comment before we start our swarm AI exercise. And, in between, we will get a chance to do a couple of reflections here and there. So Scott, please, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Kavya. I'd just like to make the point that what I see is that the insurance industry has a really interesting role to play in this that's often not discussed. We'll see new insurance products come out that will, for example, be able to mitigate against ransomware attacks and provide a framework for really putting all of that on a new and far more resilient footing.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you, Scott, for your reflection. So with that, I would invite all of our observers and panelists to now jump into the Swarm AI exercise, the intelligence gathering exercise. And for that, I would invite David Baltex to lead us through this exercise. Thank you, David. So we can just start, and I will chime in when we need to, kind of do quick reflections on things. But in the interest of time, we're going to run fast through this session a little bit. So.
Very good. Thank you. So I have posted into chat the link to rejoin into Swarm. For those of you who have exited Swarm, if you will find that chat, actually, I'll post it one more time. And for those of you who did not leave Swarm, you may need to refresh your browser. Just simply put your mouse pointer next to that glass puck, confirm that your gold magnet is visible, and your green magnet is visible. Everybody else's magnet is gold, and confirm that you can see your animation that is indicating the pull. I see people are still joining here, so I will give it just another couple seconds before we start the first question. Again, if you have any difficulties whatsoever, just simply refresh your browser and it will should take care of all those problems. All right, our first question is, what is the best way to mitigate risks in the AI-driven metaverse? Again, these may all be good choices, so give some thought to your first choice, but also be open to finding and converging on a compromise. Looks like we have a true sunflower here today. About 30 seconds to go. See if there's any positions we could, if you can consider your second position or your alternatives.
Are we allowed to speak up and try to persuade everyone while this is going?
Yes, there is a version of Swarm that actually allows for building consensus through talking. And I'm sure David can probably share more.
I could, but in the interest of time, I would just actually suggest that everybody, if you're interested in diving more, either send me a link or an email. Certainly, I encourage you to check out unanimous.ai, our website that has all of these solutions to it. This was actually a fascinating question because everything, I called it a sunflower because that's our term for when every choice there was getting some significant representation and support.
Yeah, it really speaks to our multi-stakeholder group where we attack the challenges from very different perspectives. And it's actually good to see that everybody is bringing something to the table and is very strongly opinionated towards their stuff. So I think if anybody feels strongly compelled to provide any reflections, I'll take one before we move on to the next question. Matthew?
I would just like to say what I would have said to persuade everybody, and that is every one of those things will require education to educate the public. So that's what I was voting for, because at the end of the day, we're still going to have to educate everybody about it.
Thank you for that. And so, yeah, thank you. And let's move on to the second question then.
Okay, very good. So our next question, and again, you will start by pulling for your top choice, just as you would in a survey where you would check that box. But then from there on, we are hoping that you'll be able to collectively find the best solution that the group can. And so the question we're going to consider now is, which newer strategy promises to best manage metaverse risks? And there are 4 on the screen.
Just making sure we didn't lose David. You're here? Okay. Very interesting. So virtual reality simulation for risk scenarios. Any takers on a quick reflection on this? Personally, to me, it reminds me of War Games, the movie, where you, so Jordan, please take it away.
Sure. Yeah, I was actually going to put this in the chat because it's based on Mohammed's comment also. I think, guidelines are great, but anytime you talk about industry self-regulation, I think we've proven over and over again going back to the rail baron days, over 100 years, that's not effective. not by itself anyway.
Yeah, thank you for that. And so again, in the interest of time, we're going to move forward, and thank you, Mohammed. It's highly encouraged that you put comments in the chat as well as we move on.
I'll move to our next swarm question. I'll post that right now. Which of these areas should be the initial focus for organizations starting their responsible AI adoption journey? The initial focus for organizations starting their responsible AI adoption journey.
All right, cultivating a culture of responsibility, and seems the conviction score on this is pretty strong as well. I would say that let's take another question, and then we would open for reflection for a bit.
Sorry, Kavi, did you want to move to the next question, or did you?
Yes, let's move on to the next question.
Great, sorry about that. In this next question, this will be a strongly agree to strongly disagree ratings question. And what we want you to consider is the statement: the recent US executive order on the safe, secure, and trustworthy development and use of AI sufficiently addresses the risks and concerns associated with using AI at the policy level. So I'll repeat that one more time with the knowledge that we're going to identify how strongly we agree or disagree with this statement. The recent US executive order on the safe, secure, and trustworthy development and use of AI sufficiently addresses the risk and concerns associated with using AI at the policy level. Okay, set your magnet during the 3, 2, 1 countdown, please. And just a quick comment, all of your input is identified, is all collected, and will be recorded as a single number that reflects the optimized response for this group when we do the follow-up.
Yeah. Thank you, David. And I know we have one more question left, right? But
We
before
do,
that,
and we have a bonus question as well on your list.
okay, so yeah, we'll see if we have time, but I'm really glad this question came up because the executive order was like hugely popular. Everybody shared it around LinkedIn, etc. And I so wonder from this group, you know, what their thoughts are around this. But I would also encourage, just want to add in there, we also have the new AI Act that has been sort of introduced, and I would love to gather either even a comparative or just, you know, include in your reflection how you're feeling about what's coming from the US, what's coming from the EU side, and should we think, or how you feel about whether that we should be hopeful, what's the difference, etc. So please raise your hand. And if you have any perspective on either of these, would love your reflection, or even the previous question where the conclusion was cultivating a responsible culture was one of the strategies. Quinn?
Sure, I'm going to take a stab at the responsible culture. I think the challenge with a lot of organizations, and just to oversimplify it, is there's a lot of keeping up with the Joneses. I think we heard a use case earlier where you had an entity that wanted to implement chatbots but didn't really know what it was or how it worked. I think the key is having strong use cases, identifiable use cases from an organization, and tying those back to the business plan for that year or part of that roadmap. I've sat in countless meetings where someone says, hey, we need AI. And I always ask, do you really need AI? How are you going to use it? Do you realize you already have a machine learning model that's collecting that data? You just need to do a better job at crunching that data. Oh, well, we want AI. And so I sit in meetings all the time and I hear that. And my first question is, why do you want AI? Do you understand what it's going to deliver? So I think having strong use cases and tying those back to the business plan or business model of the organization so that they see a value from it, as opposed to just saying, we have AI as part of our business, I think goes a long way.
Thank you, Quinn. And I don't see any hand raised, but I see a lot of comments in the chat that, you know, both Executive Order, EU AI Act is important. Yeah, do you really need AI? I used to work as a third-party security advisor for Meta, Facebook before, and it is always funny when people come up with requests that they want for technology, etc. So if not, nothing. Andrea, you have your hand raised, and then Scott, and then we will move on to the next question for the Swarm AI exercise. So Andrea, please go for it.
There's something Jaron Lanier said in a very recent interview that I thought was a great point. And again, I'm talking now as a developer. So he works for Microsoft, and he said, speaking kind of on behalf of big corporations like Microsoft, he said, actually, we want to be regulated. And the reason he gave for that was very interesting for me. He said, we want to be regulated because we don't want to, this technology is so big and so important, and it's obvious that it can majorly impact society. And we want to be regulated because we do not want that responsibility. We want the government to take over that responsibility of any big changes, and then we can wash our hands of it. We can say, well, as long as we follow the rules, you set the rules, we follow them. And if this thing goes down the drain and things are bad, well, it's not our responsibility because we followed the rules. You said you said the rules. And so it was an interesting perspective, and it's one that I also align with as a developer. For me, the work that would have to go into going with the answer that the group picked to the question before last, which is making sure that companies and all the actors kind of work together and network to find the best way and to align. That's just massive work for me. So speaking like as a business owner, I'm like, I don't know if I want to or I can put that work in, that networking work in, and I don't know if I want to take over the responsibility. I'd much rather, when the stakes are so high, be regulated.
I appreciate that candid, honest response, Andrea, something that we hear from almost every major big tech corporations, and you sort of represent that sort of similar interest, and that's the way they are thinking about it as well. Scott?
Thanks. Yeah, I'd like to make the point that regulation is super essential aspect of that, of course, and hats off to Jaron Lanier. He's been really kicking this massively for decades. The other point, though, is that the regulation is sort of toothless if we don't have supporting digital infrastructure to enable principles of the common law to actually exist at the protocol level in the digital world. In one sense, the law is a bit of a nothing burger on the internet at the moment. You might have like PDF contracts and whatever, but that's not happening at the protocol level. So that's an important part of this whole equation, is to really support the common law to then further support those developing regulations that hopefully we can gather some overlapping consensus on.
Thank you so much, Scott. And Pablo, quick reflection, and then, of course, Jordan, you too, quick reflection. And then we want to go to the next swarm question.
I think this thing that Andrea mentioned is very important, but regulation and weak regulation, as someone mentioned in the chat, need to be balanced with the use of standards, best practices, certification, voluntary conformity assessment, and other things. So I think it's a balance, and a balance is difficult to achieve, and you need to maintain it. So it's something that's permanent to being under maintenance.
Thank you for that. And Jordan?
Yeah, and I would just want to add one quick comment, and that is to say that I think what we're really talking about here gets back to that idea of the culture of responsibility. Setting the rules, as Andrea put it, with regulation is fantastic and does make things easier on folks, but regulation is almost always reactionary, either to actual harms or to expected or perceived harms, and they can't set all of the rules very well. So there needs to be, you really need to have both, that balance that Pablo was talking about.
Thank you so much. And just one quick comment on, sorry, the executive order on Biden from Biden administration that, sorry, it encourages American leadership in AI and really focuses on fostering innovation and economic growth. But when we contrast that with EU AI Act, it's more about how to build safe, transparent use of AI that aligns with the European fundamental rights and values. So there is a huge contrast in how they're, approaching these. In the interest of time, again, let's move on to the next Swarm AI question. David?
Perfect. Thank you. If everyone will please put your attention back over into Swarm, we'll ask the last of our questions here today. What is most critical for implementing responsible AI governance? Which of these items is most critical?
It looks like a literal tug of war this time.
And I will just know if I was the only one trying to set the magnet on the presentation, not on the OACTA webpage.
Probably not the only one.
On Zoom. So accountability, but to the good point, the other choice there really that received the attention was human oversight. And, you know, I could imagine the argument being that those are two sides of a similar coin. Thank you, Kavya.
Thank you so much. And I really want to thank everyone who took part in this questionnaire, this intelligence gathering. This is all the time we have for it. And now I want to turn it over back to our moderator, Nandita, and please take it away for any concluding remarks.
I think we had like very good participation through both the sessions, and I'm thankful for everyone who participated. Everything will be recorded and all your contributions will be included in the presentation or report that XRSI will develop and will be shared with everyone soon. Wondering if Alexander had any closing remarks before I hand it back over to Kavya.
Yes, Nandita, thank you very much. I just wanted to say that this roundtable at the Metaverse Safety Week has been a fantastic discussion. It really reinforces this idea we talked about earlier about the social contract and how the protection of a community's data can really only succeed collaboratively. If society is investing in the necessary security infrastructure, if organizations accept responsibility for the data that they're collecting and using, if each individual is taking steps they need to protect their own data, and with oversight bodies like us working to provide expertise on best practices. I also wanted to mention the idea we've talked a lot about regulation. And I think this relationship between innovative technologies and regulation is so important. Because there's really and truly a beneficial association between creativity and problem solving on the one hand, and also boundaries and regulation and social responsibility. And so this idea that we incorporated into our Mid-Atlantic Privacy Compass of how responsibility is where ethics and oversight meet. It's in the middle of those two compass points. So knowing the right thing to do meets knowing that you will be held account. So organizations have to reject this idea that innovation means sacrificing values for the speed of operations. And it's just to give a few analogies before we go, because I love this idea of how can regulation inspire creativity. There's some famous historical examples of, for example, the Apollo 13 mission, where the NASA engineers had to think about a way that they could build an air filter using only the spare parts that were already on the spacecraft. Another fun example is one of the great jazz concerts was by pianist Keith Jarrett, who was playing in Cologne, and because of a faulty piano, he had to play differently and avoid certain keys. And it ended up becoming one of his most famous and most celebrated performances. And so having these challenges and having this structure to what we're doing can help us be more innovative and help us make new connections that we might never have come across before. And so I think that's something that we all have to emphasize, that being responsible means learning to operate in those challenging circumstances and not just taking the easy way, but thinking about ethical responsibilities and being inspired by that. So on behalf of myself, my office, and the Global Privacy Assembly Executive Committee, thank you so much to all our participants. This was a great discussion, and I will turn things back over to you, Nandita, our chair, to close our session. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alex. I just have some closing statements. I'll just go through the talking points. As we wrap up today's session on cybersecurity and data protection in the metaverse, I extend my deepest gratitude to all observers, contributors, and community partners. Your expertise and insights have been instrumental in shaping our understanding and strategies. The collective efforts put together are key to forging a safer digital future. Thank you for your active participation and commitment to enhancing security and data protection in our ever-evolving digital world. We extend our profound gratitude to Meta, our lead sponsor, for making the event possible, and to the Global Privacy Assembly, our co-organizer, for their indispensable role in guiding today's discussions. Special thanks to David and the unanimous AI team for their remarkable support through the Swarm AI exercises, enhancing our collaborative efforts. We encourage everyone to continue contributing by sharing relevant links and resources at info@xrsi.org for our comprehensive roundtable report. Looking ahead, the journey of Metaverse Safety Weeks continues tomorrow with yet another important roundtable discussion. Day 5 tomorrow will be focusing on global privacy and regulations, co-organized by Global Privacy Assembly and XRSI. As we conclude today's vital discussions on cybersecurity and data protection in the AI-enabled metaverse, we leave with a deeper understanding of the evolving threat landscape and the crucial role of resilience. We've explored the complex web of risks and vulnerabilities, recognizing that AI can be both a tool for protection and a target in the metaverse. Our focus on fostering resilience through robust data protection and responsive strategies has laid a foundation for a more secure digital future. Our collaborative journey today emphasizes the need for adaptable frameworks and effective incident response protocols. By uniting industry leaders, policymakers, and the global community, we're paving the way for a metaverse that's not only innovative, but also secure and trustworthy. As we part, let's carry forward the commitment in vigilance and collaboration. The insights shared today are essential steps towards safeguarding our digital realm, ensuring it remains a space for opportunity, innovation, and safety for all. Thank you once again for your active engagement and contribution for Metaverse Safety Week. Thank you. We'll see everyone tomorrow.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining. I'll quickly end the webinar and let's